Welcome to MCP, the multi-crew podcast, your go-to destinations for everything aviation. From the latest headlines to the quirkiest aviation stories, we'll cover it all. I'm Aiden, and alongside my co-pilot Alfie. Say hi.
Hi guys, you alright? We'll bring you engaging discussions, including Aeroplane of the Week. So buckle up and let's get started.
So episode 5.
Episode 5.
We're actually second time recording this because, it failed first time.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Corrupted.
The audio was a little bit, it decided that it wanted to shorten the podcast by itself, didn't it? So
about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll start off. So our first aviation headline at the time of writing. European airlines modify the expectations for hydrogen aircraft. So in an attempt to reach net zero emissions by 2050, the European aviation sector has drastically lowered its expectation for hydrogen-powered aircraft. So according to a recent estimate, the previous projected contribution of hydrogen-powered aircraft in 2021, which was only 20%, so expect it to be 20% by 2021, is now only expected to be 6% by 2050. So that's almost divided by 4 and also set back by about 39 years.
I know, but then the thing is, hydrogen is one of them things. You hear stories of how people do hydrogen and everything, and even in the car industry, and it's just such a difficult industry, and you have to have the infrastructure for it. And if we don't even have the infrastructure for, let's say, moving on to cars a little bit, because this does relate to the airplanes, you don't even have the industry to power the whole of the UK with electric cars and hydrogen cars as well. So if we relate this to aviation, when you get loads and loads and loads of flights every day, it's not really going to work for the next.
Especially as, if we did have the infrastructure, imagine the certification process of it. It would be
horrendous.
I mean, thinking about the amount of people that have an issue with the plane crashing once every now and then, they're going to have such an issue with the plane having hydrogen.
That's very true.
Fuel.
People, that is the other issue. Actually, you mentioned trust with it. You need to be able to trust it, and I feel like a lot of people won't. A lot of people want to stay in the old ways because the old ways are renownedly safe, but obviously not very good for the environment.
So they say the main reasons for this modification is a reduced expected market and a delayed service debut for these sort of aircraft. The study also notes that over £1.3 trillion will be needed to achieve net zero emissions in European aviation.
Now, I'm a believer that I don't think there is going to be a net zero emissions in aviation, because net zero is just like a kind of a bit of a marketing scheme, I think it's designed to make airlines look good, but realistically, we're not moving away from Jet A1 anytime soon.
It smells too good, anyway.
Mate, that smell you get when the jet starts, or you just walk out to your plane and you just get the whiff fume. Oh God, turns me on a bit.
It does, yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, right. Moving on to our next story, flying car development and advances. So I love this. Boeing, Toyota and BMW are among the big firms trying to be the first flying automobile to hit the market, which is kind of cool, to be fair. But I'll tell you after, and it's why I have concerns about flying cars. By fusing aspects of controversial cars or aeroplanes with these helicopters, these vehicles called eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing, seek to transform urban mobility. So they want to change urban mobility. But the thing is, I always say this, I think if you had a flying car, surely everybody would just fly all the time. I would.
No, you wouldn't. You would. Would you?
And then you get traffic jams in the sky.
Yeah.
And then everyone will be, it'll go in like waves, won't it? It's pretty cool, but I don't think flying cars are going to be a thing, to be honest. With concepts ranging from hydrogen-powered vehicles to whatever that is, opulent, nearly quiet flying experiences, each company is making a distinct contribution to the advancement of the flying car concept. Yeah, so I'm not sure what the prototype actually looks like, but I'm assuming being it an eVTOL, it's going to have the propellers.
Yes, it's going to have propellers on top, big circle around it, and then a little cabin below. They want to use it for taxis or like helimads,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff.
I feel like Dubai are going to be the first place to get that in,
Dubai
aren't they?
probably, yeah.
Flying down there.
Oh,
Which is interesting because they are the basically leading oil industry, aren't they, in Dubai, which is kind of an interesting thing.
So our next one from All Napoleon Airways even. So ANA 222, the that word. ANA flight from Stockholm to Tokyo occurred on the 31st of last month. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner did 3-step climbs up from 37,000 feet to 39,000 feet, and we're finally topping off at 41,000 feet before landing 11 hours after.
Imagine being on a plane for 8 hours. I always think this. You know how they've, I'll say recently, I think it was as of last year, they did this Sydney to Heathrow flight. Yeah. I think it's 19 hours.
Yeah, project.
Imagine being on an airplane for that long. It's like you can't be in economy for 19 hours.
No.
And it is just, I respect people who do it, to be honest, but yeah, it's quite interesting though. But Japan Airlines, moving on to some different news. Japan Airlines Boeing 787. Boeing 787, operated by Japan Airlines, had clipped the tail of a parked Delta aircraft at Seattle Airport whilst taxiing. Yeah, I can remember when this happened because I saw the video and I didn't think it was real.
No, I mean, if you watch it, you can very clearly see the aircraft is not going to fit and it's going to hit the other aircraft.
Exactly.
But for some reason, they continued and, well, hit the other aircraft.
They did, and I find it about, how does a pilot not know the size of his own aircraft?
Very true.
But there again, the 787 isn't exactly a small aeroplane, is it? But then, if you look at a 787 compared to a 777, then there is actually quite a size difference. And I stand by the fact that 777 sounds better. It's just absolutely awesome. Yeah, like I say, if you watch a video, there's no way it was going to fit there. And we've had a few instances like that recently with airplanes crashing into one another, such as the Black Hawk and the TRJ thing that in America. I can't remember where it was now, but it was somewhere in America though, and that happened. Right. Moving on to the fan favourite section of whatever fans we do have, Aeroplane of the Week, and I have chose to do the Boeing 747. Absolutely incredible aeroplane. Often referred to as Queen of the Skies, 747 is amongst the most recognisable planes in aviation history. The world's first wide-body airliner, Pan Am, debuted in 1970 and transformed long-haul travel by lowering ticket costs and expanding passenger capability. And they obviously did this with the 747 Classic. 747, which created in response to the increasing demand for air travel, was a game changer for all airlines over the world, since it could accommodate over 400 passengers. Now, 400 passengers back in 1970 was considered a lot. Because when you have a look at all the other jets, I mean, what did you have back in 1970? I think you had
707.
707. Were there any tri-jets back in?
Yeah, there would have been the MD-11.
Yeah. DC-10.
Yeah.
So you had all them, and then the 747 comes along. Oh my God, it must have been incredible to get to fly one of those for the first time. There were almost twice as many as previous aircraft it could handle. 400 people. It's a lot. Its characteristic humped upper deck came to represent international aviation travel. And on the earlier models of some Pan Am airplanes, I don't know if you've seen, but they dedicated the whole upper deck just to have a bar.
Yeah.
So the first class was obviously at the front of the nose, but the bar was upstairs. I'm sure they had
bar with a VA.
Yeah, they had a piano player and everything. It was absolutely awesome.
It's also the only aircraft where the passengers actually can sit ahead of the pilots.
Yeah,
big cockpit. God, I'm not speaking very English there. The cockpit is slightly sat back. It is on top,
but it looks really cool though.
It does look really cool.
Can you remember the first time you ever seen a 747?
No, I can't actually. I can remember flying one. Can't remember.
See, I've never been lucky enough to fly in one, but I can remember a few times when I've seen the 747. But the first time I actually got up close to one though was actually only like a few years ago when I went to Korea, I think it's 2022, where they had technically it's not a 747, it's an E-4B Doomsday plane, but it's based on the 747. That's the only time we've got really close to one. Anyway, the Boeing 747 revolutionized international travel by lowering the cost and increasing accessibility for millions of travelers, which it did because pretty much every airline bloody had one, didn't it? With early models including piano bars, like I mentioned earlier, and onboard lounges, it also raised the bar for luxury. The 747's legacy is unrivaled, despite the fact that several airlines have retired their fleets in favour of more fuel-efficient twin-engine aircraft, which is very upsetting.
Yeah.
It's also the case for the Airbus A340 as well. That's one of my favourite planes. Isn't it?
Also a reason why the A380 kind of flopped.
However, the A380 flopped for most people, but Emirates thought, no, we've got too much money. We've got too much money, so they're trying. I think they're in talks of trying to get them to make a few more A380-800s. Which is crazy. Yeah. The 747 had an unmatched impact on aviation, from transporting presidents and popes to carrying the space shuttle Endeavour. So the president, as we all know, the airplane he flies in is the VC-25. Yeah. But it is named Air Force One when the president's on it.
Talking about that, sorry. So they were meant to update the aircraft to the VC-25B, I think it's called.
Yeah. Because it's based off the 747-8 model.
Yeah, so we're going to update it to the 8. And unfortunately, well, now that we've got Trump coming in, he signed the contract before Biden administration, and he was expecting it to be underway. Still hasn't happened. So he's actually said we're going to have a look at other people to produce it. He said he won't buy an Airbus at all. He's not going to France for it. But I mean, who else can he really go to?
I was going to say, there isn't really any other
long haul aircraft except for
Boeing and Airbus. Yeah, because he wouldn't want to fund pretty much Europe, would he, with that?
Maybe not.
I mean, he's, anyway. But you also had the Space Shuttle Endeavour carrier, which is absolutely awesome. I think that was the classic 747. And they put, on the rear tailplane, they put, they stabilisers at the end of the
so they move the rudder and then they kind of put it, so they had vertical stabilisers on the end of the fins, and then I think rudders were on the back of it.
It's so cool though. It was so cool. But yeah, all of these solidified its status as one of the best aircraft ever produced, and I stand by that. I think it is, other than Concorde, the best aircraft ever created. I think in terms of changing, I don't think in terms of engineering, I think in terms of just changing aviation.
Yeah. Well, I think pinnacle, isn't it? Everyone knows it. Queen of the Sky, you see it and everyone knows about it.
People who don't know airplanes, if you actually saw a 747, that is the airplane people will picture if you mentioned airplane.
Exactly. Yeah. And if someone who didn't know much about planes saw it, they'd probably recognise that it's a 747.
They'd know it's a 747. Yeah. Even my dad, he used to fly back and forth from Japan, probably with Japan Airlines. He used to fly in the 747 and he got upgraded to business class one. He said it was one of the best experiences of his life. Anyway, enough about the 747. We're going to go on to our next section, which is questions from the cabin.
We do, yes. So these are questions from our two viewers.
Yeah. Our audience.
And yeah, so our first question is, why do aircraft leave contrails in the sky? Well, first we need to talk about what is water vapour. Obviously, water vapour, water droplets. That's a byproduct created by burning kerosene, which is a fuel used in modern day jet airliner aircraft, their engines. And also at the elevations that aircraft are flying at, so like 30,000 feet, 31, 32, etc. The air's, funny enough, quite fucking cold.
Yeah.
In fact, it's sometimes minus 40, minus 50 degrees. And the engine's heated water vapour that it produces by burning the engine fuel, the kerosene, it condensates into small water droplets as it comes into contact with this chilly air, pretty much straight away.
If you want to imagine this in like a day-to-day scenario, it's like condensation on a window.
Yeah, just like extremely
when you get like a warmer air with a lot of moisture in it hitting a colder air, it will obviously bring the colder air to the dew point, and then obviously you'll get your water form, which is why you get contrails. So technically, they are little clouds.
Strictly speaking, yes. Yeah.
Strictly speaking, they are little clouds.
So these white visible streaks in the sky are created when these droplets become basically ice.
And actually,
that's when they come
visible. I don't know if you've noticed this, but sometimes if you look in the sky and you actually see some contrails going along, they do actually turn into cirrus clouds. Some of them do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I read up about it the other day because I thought it was quite interesting. So I always thought about that because sometimes you see like little wispy clouds, which are just natural ones, and then other times, due to like wind and jet stream and all that stuff, you actually do get formation of a cloud from the back of an airplane, which is very cool, but it doesn't actually harm the environment, which is really cool. Now, on to our next question, which is, what is turbulence and is it dangerous? Well, the erratic flow of air that makes an airplane tilt, tremble, or undergo abrupt changes in altitude is known as turbulence. Turbulence is caused by numerous atmospheric phenomena, including storms, the jet stream, mountain waves, weather patterns, all these like. So, obviously, with storms, you get updrafts, downdrafts. So, sometimes if you're flying above a storm, you'll probably get like an updraft, and that will usually rock you about a little bit. Mountain waves, you don't really get mountain waves on airliners. They're more of a general aviation type thing if you're flying like around a mountain. And a fun fact to spot mountain waves, if you get lenticular clouds above a mountain, it gives you mountain waves.
It does. I remember seeing that in the book.
Yeah.
And it made me hate life.
Yeah, no,
don't like that.
Meteorology is the worst thing I think I've ever done in my life, but it's the most interesting. It's just the exam does not like anybody. No. And I fell victim to the exam not liking me. A typical aspect of flying is turbulence. Of course it is. It happens every time. And it occurs on pretty much every single flight. There isn't anything to worry about, really. Turbulence generally poses no threat, as I said, to aeroplanes. Pilots are trained to deal with turbulence, and planes are built to survive even extreme turbulence. However, if passengers and crew are not adequately secured, turbulence may be dangerous. So sometimes, no, in fact, all the time, it's very important to wear your seatbelt on an airplane because sometimes you can't spot turbulence.
Yeah. It won't come up on radar, on the weather radar, so it does just generally come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it can, because it could be from, depending on where you are, it could be from the wake of other airplanes. It could just be a random change in wind direction. Okay. So that's why, even though if the seatbelt sign's off, sometimes it's like really best to wear your seatbelt, because at the end of the day, it's going to stop you from flying out your seat if turbulence does hit. Because it can just happen in an instant, really. Right. Why do some planes have winglets, Aiden?
Well, it's a good question you asked. Yes. So first we need to talk about what are winglets. Well, they're the small upturned extensions on the end of the aircraft's wings, placed at the tips. And the purpose of them is to lower drag and increase fuel economy.
Yeah.
But how does it actually do this? Well, first we need to talk about, pretty much how aircraft fly. Well, aircraft fly due to the air pressure difference on the top and the bottom of the wing, or the winglet, producing lift, because we've got high pressure on the bottom and lower pressure on the top.
I always think of it, we think of this in a different way, but it's technically the same way. It's like, I think of it as if the wing sucks the airplane into the sky. You think of it as if it pushes it into
I think of it.
But basically, in actual fact, it does both of them things. It sucks and lifts.
It sucks and squeezes.
Yeah.
Not just all what we meant.
Yeah, this is, we are talking about aeroplanes, if anybody was wondering.
Yeah.
But no, so obviously you get the low pressure on the top, high pressure on the bottom. That is what creates the fundamental for lift. I remember when I was younger, I always used to think the way how lift was created on an airplane is the pilot lifted the nose up and the engines would force it into the sky. I think everybody probably thought that when I just thought the wings were two like metal steel rods.
I thought it was just to keep it stable. Which it's not wrong, but
it's not their primary focus though, is it?
No, but Yeah, so at the end of, well, high pressure, low pressure, if you remember in biology or physics or anything, they like to equalize.
They do.
So high pressure wants to go to the low pressure and basically fill it up and make it
Happy.
make it happy. Fill it up, make it happy.
Make it happy.
And make it feel a bit more like itself, basically. So how this what this ends up causing is vortices on the ends of the wings. And these aren't good.
No, they're
Because
not.
these actually cause drag. That's not good. So we have these winglets on the end of the wing, and these basically help the aircraft fly more effectively by using less fuel, often sometimes up to 5% less fuel. And overall, this lowers operational expenses and carbon emissions, resulting in, well, happy Earth, happy us, happy everyone. And in order to optimize aerodynamic performance, many aircraft, such as the 737 MAX, the 787, they have sophisticated winglet designs. So the A320, they have their shark lip.
Some of them have the split scimitar.
Yeah, that's the MAX has that.
It does.
The 787 has something called a raked one.
What's really fascinating about 787 is you don't actually really notice it. It's kind of like
it's built into it. Yeah, that's what the raked one is.
And I think the 787 is just such a fascinating aircraft because I think that the wings they are so incredibly high tech. You wouldn't think of it, but they bend up to 30 degrees. I think when they
30 degrees
take off and they just stay like that. And because they're so flexible, it acts as suspension for the plane. I mean, basically, that's what wings do as well. Because after all, they are connected to the airframe. And it is absolutely incredible to watch them take off. And yeah, I think they're made of carbon fiber as well. Carbon fiber composite.
To keep it nice and light, yes.
The whole airplane is. That's why you can get such big windows because carbon fiber, as light as it is, very, very strong.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting.
Very nice windows. And we've also got the 787's quite unique because it's instead of having like a blind, it has something called electronical dimming window.
Yeah.
So I can't remember exactly what it uses, but it uses like photosensitive electronical material that when you pass electric through it, it basically changes the state of it, so it dims it.
Yeah.
And you can change it through different settings. And I have a video on my phone, it's about 2 minutes long, and that's on time lapse of it dimming, and it's pretty cool.
And you know why that is very important? Because you don't get the Karen behind you pulling your blind down.
Very true.
If the sun is in her face.
Yes.
Now that is obviously a very important thing, and I don't like when Karens do that.
The other thing it means is, in case you guys have realised, when you come into land at any point, actually, if you come to land, you're always told to put the window blinds up. Sometimes passengers don't do this. The reason behind doing it is, so you can spot issues, basically. Yeah. And also so your eyes are adjusted to the light in case of an emergency.
Which is why, when you land at night time, they dim the cabin lights.
Precisely.
But they only do that during the quote-unquote dangerous parts of the flight, the landing, the takeoff.
Yeah.
When in actual fact, the pilot's done it so many times, it's not really dangerous, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes people don't do it, whereas in this system, the cabin crew can actually just take over everyone's window and say, fuck you, it's bedtime.
You don't have any choice.
Don't have a choice. But that brings us nicely onto the end of the podcast.
It does.
And obviously at the end of the podcast, we talk about last week's flight fact quiz, and we introduce a new one for you to figure out and guess on the next podcast. So, last week's question was, what is the name of the invisible force that helps an aircraft lift off ground by reducing air pressure on top of the wings? Well, if you couldn't tell by what we literally just spoke about, I've just closed my laptop. It's drag. No, it's not drag. Why did I say drag?
It's lift.
Lift.
We both said the wrong answer.
Wow.
And the fact that we're going to be pilots, I think you should be scared.
Drag?
I don't know.
That's shocking.
I think it's because you saw it on here for the first time.
Yeah, God knows. Anyway, Alfie, introduce our question for next week.
I will do. And spoiler alert, I've actually seen one of these, and it is the coolest airplane I think I've ever seen. We saw it at the same place, actually. And the question is, what was the first jet-powered aircraft to enter service with the RAF? And in what year did it become operational? And you'll find out after the break. Oh yeah, no, I can't wait. I can't wait. I love that airplane so much.
I've seen them do low approaches. Funny enough, at the airport, it was named after. But I won't give you no spoilers because, you guess what it is then.
And Aiden, that is it.
That's the end of
episode 5. And this is where
second time.
This is where we do our awkward. Click the bell icon, subscribe, listen, tell your nan, tell your family.
Exactly. Share it to you.
And tell your dog, your rabbit, your horse, your tortoise, whatever animal, but your shark, your tiger.
For views, for likes, for whatevers.
Yeah.
A bit of that, bit of this.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you.